Today, we are talking about borderline personality disorder. How does this affect our relationships? How can we possibly help somebody out? And really, more than anything else, as Catholics, how does this affect our goal towards making it to heaven? First, we have to recognize what are the traits of borderline personality disorder. And when before the break, we were talking about how the interpersonal functioning of somebody with borderline personality disorder is in relationships. We're talking about how, as far as an intimate relationship, it can be very, very challenging because the person who suffers from this personality disorder will be mistrustful of the relationship, will have extreme neediness and anxiousness and not want to be abandoned, while at the same time, it goes on to talk about intimacy, saying that close relationships are often viewed in extremes, which is very true, of idealization and devaluation, and alternating between over-involvement and withdrawal, which means that, I don't trust you. I think that you were talking to somebody for too long. I think that you're going to cheat on me and I don't know what's going on there. So I'm not going to talk to you now. And I'm not going to talk to you for a week because you are all bad. But we are still in a relationship, but you are all bad. And after that week, you got to figure out how to make me happy. That's just kind of how it goes with borderline personality disorder. It can be very, very challenging. And they don't recognize that they might be in an extreme mode. Now, again, if you're in a dating relationship, it's a new relationship, you don't know the person that well, sometimes these things will come up. So sometimes some of these personalities will come out, and we're not always proud of them after we recognize that we've done this. But again, do we have that recognition? If we do, that's a good thing, because there's a chance for us to improve. Can't go to therapy if you don't feel like you need to improve. There's no sense in going to therapy, because if the person says that there's nothing I need to do differently, then what are we working on? Okay, let's look at the personality traits that somebody who might be suffering from personality disorder exhibits. And we're going to look at their negative affectivity. We're going to look at their disinhibition, and we're going to look at antagonism. So these are some of the personality traits that will come out while they're going through this. So remember, the relationship with themselves, they're very insecure. They really have a lot of negative self-image. The relationship with others, there's no sense of intimacy, no compassion. And when they are in a relationship, it's all about them, and it's either all good or all bad. As far as the personality traits that they exhibit, there's emotional liability, meaning that there's unstable emotional experiences and frequent mood changes. Emotions are very easily aroused, intense, and or out of proportion to the events or circumstances. So it's somebody who you're shopping with, and they go into the candle aisle and they see some candles and they think that they're great. And I'm just using candles as an example. It doesn't have to be candles, and all of a sudden they just are in love with candles and they can't stop thinking about them. And they're going to talk about candles all day long. And this is what's going to be the source of their happiness in life. And they're going to open up a candle shop, and you're like, where did that come from? So extremely unstable, extremely easily aroused and intense emotions. They do have anxiousness. So this is very, very common of people with borderline personality disorder. So intense feelings of nervousness, tenseness, or panic, often in reaction to interpersonal stresses, worry about the negative effects of past unpleasant experiences and future negative possibilities. They feel fearful, apprehensive, or threatened by uncertainty, and they have fears of falling apart or losing control. And this is true. This is why the sense of abandonment, the sense of everything's exciting, everything's great, but it usually comes from an underlying panic, an underlying anxiety, an underlying worry about life in general, really more than anything else. But if you notice, if my anxieties, if let's say somebody is experiencing, let's say I feel anxious about everything, I'm worried about everything, I'm going to be affecting everybody around me, because I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to direct people as to what they should or shouldn't do based on my emotions. And my emotions might be out of proportion to the situation, but it doesn't matter because I think I'm right. And try to convince me otherwise, you're not going to be able to do that. And everybody else around me kind of has to change. And this is where somebody with personality disorder is going to affect everybody around them, but they don't recognize it, and they feel that they're in the right. They don't recognize that they are putting people off because they say, nope, that's how it is, and this is what you got to do. So there's emotional liability, we said, there's anxiousness. And then we had talked about this before, where we talked about fear of abandonment. One of the big personality traits here that comes out with borderline personality disorder is separation insecurity, fears of rejection by and or separation from a significant other, associated with fears of excessive dependency and complete loss of autonomy. This is very important. There's that sense of abandonment, fear of being separate from somebody. And, this happens to anybody, really. We see this from childhood. If a kid is not with their parents, they are going to have an intense fear. If the parent leaves the room, they don't like that. If they're separated their first day of preschool, they'll start crying. That is normal for an infant, for a child, for a toddler, for somebody going to preschool, for somebody in kindergarten, for somebody even in elementary school. I'll give you that. Once we reach a certain stage of beyond adolescence, shall we say, we hope that there is a maturity, but we can experience this as adults as well. How many times are we, breakups are not fun. If we break up in a relationship, how many times do people break up and they're saying, I love you, I hate you? And today's day and age, I didn't have this before, but text messaging, how many text messages fly back and forth in the middle of a breakup, vacillating between, I can't believe you did this to me, you're the worst person in the world, and you were the only thing I cared about and loved, and now I'm hurt. That's normal to go through these ups and downs, shall we say, intensities of starting relationships and ending relationships. If you are in a dating relationship, for somebody with borderline personality disorder, we have to recognize that their level of fear, their insecurity with separation, especially from significant others, is associated with this excessive fear, such an excessive fear and they have excessive dependency, like we were saying before the break, that if you try to break up with them, they will sometimes threaten and say, I am going to end my life. You can't break up with me because I am going to jump off a bridge. I'm going to end my life. And then you are responsible. Well, that's a pretty heavy burden. And I know a lot of people stay in relationships because they don't want to be responsible for the other person ending their life. As a psychiatrist, of course, I will always tell somebody, do not end your life. Do not try to hurt yourself. If you feel that you might want to end your life, you can call 911. You can reach out to a therapist, reach out to a friend, tell somebody. Do not end your life. That's not what we do here. And in mental health, that's always one of our biggest concerns, is because we care about people, is, do you feel depressed? Do you feel like you want to hurt yourself? Do you feel like you want to end your life? Every conversation we have incorporates that in mental health. Well, imagine being in a relationship and somebody telling you that you're responsible for them living or dying. The truth is, you are not responsible for them living or dying. They're an adult, and we tell them, we hope you don't make that decision. This happens when somebody with a borderline personality disorder, very common, they will go to the emergency department multiple times because their emotions are not stable, because they feel that they've been slighted, they feel scared, and they will come to the emergency department and say that they want to end their life. Well, we need to tease that out a little bit more. We need to talk to them and figure out, as a physician, as a treating physician, what is it that we're going to do? Let's put you in the hospital. Let's see how you're doing. We do have sometimes some people who, unfortunately, this is their pattern, and they come to the hospital, they get admitted, and then we discharge them because they're stable, and then they come back, and they come back, and then they go back and forth. After a while, we have to let them know, unfortunately, hospitalization does not seem to be of benefit to you because you don't improve even coming to the hospital. We understand that at times you might have intense feelings of hurting yourself, and we advise you not to. We hope that you don't, and we do want you to reach out for help. However, hospitalization might not be the answer for you in particular. And that's on a case-by-case basis. So it's always in doubt, go to the emergency department. And if your loved one is going to say that they're hurt themselves, try to get them to the emergency department, call 911, get them help. But don't be surprised if all of a sudden there is a pattern and they say, we do want you to get help. This is just, hospitalization might not be a treatment modality for you. Another personality trait is that they feel depressed. Frequent feelings of feeling down, miserable, and or hopeless, difficulty recovering from such moods, pessimism about the future, pervasive shame, feelings of inferior self-worth, thoughts of suicide, and suicidal behavior. So like I was saying, very common for somebody with borderline personality disorder to not only be depressed, but to jump to the idea of suicide or suicidal behavior. We've been talking about that in context of breaking up with relationships, but in reality, they can react that way for any reason. Something went bad at work, they didn't get the promotion, they got called out on something they might have done wrong, and right away their feelings are so intense, or the depression can be so intense that for what might appear to be something slight on the outside, for them, it's a matter of life or death. And they feel like they want to end their life more than anything else because they don't have a good sense of self-worth. What's the point? Why am I here? And they feel like there's no sense in moving forward. I'm just going to end my life because I'm no good to anybody. Now, I'm sure that we have all experienced that at points in our lives. Not that we want to end our life, but we might have experienced, gosh, I really don't want to exist right now. I wish if I were dead, I wouldn't have to deal with this. Very common, I joke around with my college age patients and I tell them, how many times when you're driving to school, to college, and you have a final, you say, gosh, if I got in a car accident right now, I wouldn't have to take this test that I don't feel prepared for. It's not that you want to die. It's that, taking a test feels overwhelming and you'd rather not be in that situation. But for somebody with borderline personality disorder, that feeling is so intense, we never want to risk not listening to them or not helping them out. This is where we really focus on the consequences of having borderline personality disorder is the trait of disinhibition. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's two big things, impulsivity and risk-taking, which for somebody with borderline personality disorder can be very, very dangerous. Now, somebody with borderline personality disorder sees things very black and white. Sometimes people are all good or all bad. Either they like you intensely and you are perfect and there's nothing that you can do that's wrong, or they really don't like somebody at all and there's nothing they can do to redeem themselves in their eyes. And that can be very challenging. Combine that with a sense of impulsivity and risk-taking. It can be, these are the things that we worry about. So with impulsivity, they act on the spur of the moment. We saw that in terms of relationships. Gosh, I met somebody, I love them. This is it. This is great. This is all I want to do the rest of my life. So they will act on the spur of the moment and in response to an immediate stimuli. So I just met this person and they're wonderful, or I love this car, I'm just going to buy it, which, sometimes makes us wonder when we have to evaluate, is there any element of mania here? They are acting on a momentary basis without a plan or consideration of the outcome. I'm just going to buy this car. How are you going to finance it? I don't know, but I'm just going to do it. They have difficulty establishing or following plans. So I bought the car. Okay, great. Now I want to return it. Well, now you can't because there was a plan here in place. You bought it and now you're responsible for it and you can sell it. No, I just want to return it. It doesn't work that way. And then they have a sense of urgency and self-harming behavior under emotional distress. And this is where the impulsivity we talked about, suicide is is at the forefront for somebody with borderline personality disorder. That can be very challenging and scary, especially for those around them, because you never know when they might follow through on something like that. Sometimes to get somebody's attention, they might even say that they took a bunch of pills, or they might actually take a bunch of pills just to get attention. And they're saying, I don't want to end my life. I just wanted to get your attention. But with that impulsivity, that might not have been your goal, but you're definitely headed in that direction. And that's something that we want to be cautious of. The sense of urgency as self-harming behavior under emotional distress. It's challenging because remember, anything can cause emotional distress. Anything can upset somebody with borderline personality disorder, and we don't always know what the triggers are. Once they're triggered in that way, once their emotions are turned on to a point where they feel like they are under distress, all of a sudden, things need to get fixed right away, make it right now. This can't be, I can't feel this way, or I'm going to end my life. They can cut themselves sometimes because they're feeling so emotionally intense without even the thought of wanting to end their life. A lot of people sometimes will exhibit cutting behavior where they do it more than anything else to have a physical representation of pain to the emotional pain that they're experiencing. And this is something to remember, folks. These people, when they experience this, they truly are in pain. They don't necessarily know how to come out of the situation because, again, they don't recognize that it could be them or that they have the power to change this. Somebody with a personality disorder has this risk-taking capacity where they engage in dangerous, risky, and potentially self-damaging activities unnecessarily and without regard to consequences, and they lack concern for one's limitations and denial of the reality of personal danger. Again, This risk taking and impulsivity, it's a dangerous combination. You meet somebody at a bar, you think you're in love with them. After 5 minutes of meeting them, you're going to go home with them and you have no idea who they are. This is a very dangerous situation. And for somebody with borderline personality disorder, I was just going with my feelings. I knew with my gut that that's what was good. I felt that that was perfect. Remember, situations can be all good or all bad. This is a challenging combination. Now, why is it so hard? Because you're thinking, gosh, I really want to help this person out. They're not seeing things. How can we get them to see things? How can we get them to a point where they recognize that what they're doing might be toxic and not helpful? Well, here's the thing. You might want to go up and let them know and say, hey, I want to help you out. I don't think that you're seeing how your life is going or the decisions you're making, how that's affecting things. Let me help you out. So why isn't that possible? One, remember, they don't have insight. So they're not going to recognize it. You might tell them that and they might say, no, I don't see that. I don't think I need help. So that's one of them. But here's the other big problem. A huge trait is antagonism, hostility, persistent or frequent angry feelings, anger or irritability in response to minor slights and insults. If a person with borderline personality disorder feels like you are insulting them in any way whatsoever, whether it's real or perceived, you might not be trying to insult them, they immediately will have a hostile response. They will get angry, they will have hurt feelings, and they will lash out at people. And this is where it can be very, very challenging. Imagine you come up to somebody and say, you know what, I think things aren't going well for you. I want to help you out. I think that you're, getting into these relationships that are very risky, and, I worry about your safety. And all of a sudden they feel like you are telling them that they're bad, that they are not a good person, because this is how they're going to interpret it, that they make mistakes all the time, and they will respond with anger and hostility. That's very classic of borderline personality disorder, and that's where it can get really challenging. Why would I want to help somebody who's just going to yell at me or get angry at me or assume that I am all bad? It can be very, very tricky. You're walking that fine line and you're saying, no, I really want to help them out, but that's obviously not where they are at or where they function. All these traits together make it a very challenging situation. Well, Dr. Sandoval, is there any help for somebody who is experiencing borderline personality disorder? In a way, yes, there is. You can take them to therapy, and there is something called dialectical behavioral therapy. Now, DBT, as they call it, dialectical behavioral therapy. The goal of this therapy is really to hopefully help somebody recognize that when they react with intensity, or when they feel slighted, or when they feel upset, or when these emotions are very, very intense for them, they don't have to turn to thoughts of suicide, of ending their life, of needing to react. It's more than anything else, learning how to process those emotions, learning how to process those feelings. It can be very hard to do that. It can be very challenging to do that. And because the person, again, has to recognize to begin with that there is a situation there that they can improve on, or that they might be causing problems overall. Now, who would experience borderline personality disorder? Somebody who experienced trauma as a child, sexual abuse, somebody who experienced emotional abuse as a child. Any of these things can lead to this dysregulation of emotions and behaviors. Unfortunately, there is no medication treatment. So you can try to prescribe medication for somebody with borderline personality disorder, and you think, oh, there's got to be a pill for everything. Not for personality disorders. We haven't found anything yet that will help to quell the emotional roller coaster ride. DBT is the best bet in terms of going out there and trying to say, hey, life doesn't have to be as intense. Now, we're talking about these traits, but let me give you a real life example of somebody I saw in the emergency department one time. It was a lady, maybe about 30 years old. In her 30s, shall we say, and she was in a relationship. She wasn't married. She was living with her boyfriend, and she came to the emergency department. I happened to be working at the hospital at the time. And I got a call because they said, "Hey, Dr. Sandoval, there's somebody here who wants to end their life, and they need to speak to psychiatry." So, of course, I go over there, and this was in the wee hours of the morning, maybe 2 o'clock, anywhere between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning. So, kind of a quiet time of day. It wasn't entirely a fast night at the hospital. It was okay. And I get there, and, for the most part, the emergency department was pretty calm, except for one room where somebody was yelling at a security guard, and the security guard was at the door, and they were telling him to go away. And so I thought, there's my patient. Sometimes you walk in and you realize, I think I know where I'm supposed to go. So I get to the room and I talk to the security guard, and, obviously he's there because whenever somebody says that they want to end their life or whatnot, we put them on security protocol. So somebody has to be there to just watch and make sure that they're not going to hurt themselves. I get to the room and I, walk in cautiously. And of course, she was angry at me. She had not met me. She did not know who I was, other than I was a physician at the hospital. And I could already sense, remember we said that there was a lot of hostility and antagonism. And I walked in and she was very angry, did not know me. She told me to get out, and that I wasn't there, what was my purpose, that I wasn't going to help her, that nothing could get better. And I let her know kindly that I couldn't leave because I was there for a purpose. My job was to help her out and to see, and that she came in for a purpose. She came to the emergency department of her own volition because she was very upset. So we were glad that she came in, saying she wanted to end her life. As we got to talking, initially she said she didn't like me because I reminded her of her boyfriend for whatever reason. Maybe I looked like him, maybe my mannerisms or something along those lines. And she didn't want to talk to me because I couldn't help her, and I was just going to hurt her feelings as well. So I told her, well, I can appreciate that you're upset, but we just met. You don't know me and I don't know you. And really our relationship is nothing more than a doctor-patient relationship. And I just need to figure out why you feel like you want to end your life. And she said, okay. So we got to talking a little bit, and it turned out that she said that she didn't feel her boyfriend cared about her or loved her. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, he came home from it was the evening, he came home and he didn't even pay attention to me. And I had put a gun, he owned a gun. And she said, I put his gun on the coffee table and I laid out the bullets next to the gun. And I was sitting there crying, and he walked in and he just walked upstairs and he said hello, but he walked upstairs and he didn't care about me or what I was doing. Well, a lot of questions came to mind here. And I said, let's back up a little bit. So, where's his gun now? And she said, oh, he has it. And I said, okay. And I said, are you worried that he's going to use it, or has he ever harmed you? Is there any violence in the relationship? She said, no, absolutely not. She said, it's just emotionally violent because he doesn't care about me. I said, well, what made you take out the gun and put the bullets out that way? What, did you really feel like you want to end your life? She said, I don't know that I wanted to end my life. She said, but I needed to let him know that I was there, that I was feeling dead inside, and he didn't recognize that. I said, well, that's kind of an intense way to send your message. I said, why were you feeling so dead? What was going on? She said, when he left from the house this morning and he said goodbye, he didn't hug me the right way. I said, he didn't hug you the right way? And she said, yes. And he hurt my feelings. I said, well, what do you think now, though? Why didn't he pay attention to you? She said, well, it's not the first time I do it. I do this all the time. I put the gun out there all the time, and he ignores me. So intense relationships, we were able to help her out. We got her in the hospital. She improved her relationship. We went to therapy. But just to give you an idea, borderline personality disorder can be hard. Pray for your loved ones, get them therapy, get them help, and always try to keep everything Catholic.